Famous Dean Hall, the guy that swam the Willamette.
I was dying of leukemia and lymphoma. Spoiler alert, I lived
How old were you when you swam that?
54, and I was still an active cancer patient. I still had leukemia and lymphoma. But lo and behold, that constant hypothermia is what healed my leukemia.
Welcome to our third episode of Out of Network and Into Wellness. We have a guest with us today named Dean Hall, the famous Dean Hall, the guy that swam the Willamette, the guy that, how many miles have you swam, Dean?
Altogether,
Yeah.
I have no idea. The Willamette was 187. The River Shannon was 180. Swam the Eel, that was 77. That's in Northern California. I picked that one because it's a river that goes through the redwoods, so that was pretty cool. And then I swim on the average of a mile or two a day, have for the last 10 years. So you do the math.
I think I'd have a number, but that's all. That's good. It's too many to count, actually, right?
Yeah, and the fun thing for me is living here where I do in Oregon. I swim in what's called the Clackamas River. It's only 13 minutes away, and it's so clean. It's cleaner than the drinking water in France, which might say something about the French. I don't know, but I call it the training of truth. I'll swim half a mile to a mile down current, and I get about 8 to 10 yards of stroke, and then I'll turn around, and it's so clear you can see every little pebble on the bottom, and I get maybe an inch or two a stroke. And you gotta maintain your technique really well, or you'll start going back. But mostly it's just mental training, because your brain starts screaming, "You're never gonna make it!" So it's really good for mental toughness. Plus, it's cold, so I get my cold plunging, resilience workout, mental toughness workout, the exercise and nature connection all in one.
That's awesome.
Pretty fun.
Yes. So, Dean, tell us about yourself. You're obviously a swimmer, but you're friends with Doc Waters here. Are you're a doctor as well? Is that correct?
No, I'm just a schlub.
Not.
No, I was a teacher in the little town that Aaron came to in about 99, 2000, right around there.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
We were lucky to get him because not much else was happening in that town. But because it's just a little town 4 miles from the Oklahoma border, uh, 12,000 people. And so he was too good for us. And those of us that were smart enough to know it really appreciated him being there. Sadly, a lot of people didn't realize it till he was gone. But we got to know each other, and struck up a friendship. And I can honestly say, if it wasn't for Aaron, I wouldn't be alive. But yeah, so I taught in that town for 20 years, middle school, and had a great time. But I didn't want to voluntarily make my family poverty stricken. So I decided to become a therapist, and this is now my 35th year as a therapist, which makes me officially old. But yeah, I've done over almost 62,000 1-hour face-to-face sessions.
Wow. So that's amazing. So therapy, what discipline are you? Psychiatrist, or are you?
Yeah, I'm a licensed clinical marriage and family therapist, but for years, and this is where Aaron and I really got to know each other, I specialized in anxiety and trauma. And so he'd send all his anxiety folks to me, especially his panic disorder. Half the time, I think he was just sending me people he wanted to get rid of for a while. But, but he won't admit it. It's part of that Hippocratic oath, I think. But yeah, so that's what I've been doing all these years.
That's amazing. I work with another podcast that I do is Beacon for Hope, the stronger than the storm. And we've had Aaron on our podcast talking about the medical side of mental health, and you know, doing techniques that you can use out and how to get off medications with um, natural methods. So how often do you use the cold plunge and all the other stuff that you've learned, you know, on your extracurricular activities in your counseling sessions?
Right, right. Yeah, I've been cold plunging since before cold plunging was a thing. I was dying of leukemia and lymphoma in August of 2013. And I just the year before almost died of viral meningitis. And that had taken me down to 152 pounds. I'm 6'1". I always right around between 2'5", 215. So 152 pounds, if you can imagine, I looked like I just walked out of Auschwitz. And I just lost my wife 2.5, 3 years earlier, 15 days for our 30th anniversary. She was a Park City girl. That's what I was doing there in that part of Kansas. And so I was still really traumatized and grief stricken from that. But my daughter in 2013 was 21 years old, and she just lost her mama. And I thought, man, I can't let her become a 21-year-old orphan. I got to do whatever I can do to stay alive. So I'd used a lot of uh, um, techniques, but the one that helped people the most that I had seen over my years as a therapist that brought people back to life is Viktor Frankl's work in Man's Search for Meaning. He was an Austrian psychiatrist right before World War II, and he actually landed in Auschwitz. And he found, as he watched people in there, those people that were passionate about a purpose had a better chance of overcoming their situation. As a matter of fact, the best chance. The more passionate you were, the greater chance you had of surviving. So I knew if I became passionate about a purpose, that I had a good chance of living. But I had kind of given up by that point. Life had beat me up. By 2003, I lost my wife in 2010, and then I got viral meningitis in 2012. Made a lot of stupid mistakes in my grief-stricken uh, stupor. One of them, kind of hooking up with just what I see now as a predator, a woman that was really smart and somewhat attractive, but yeah, never would have picked her in my right mind. But that added a lot of stress to my life too. And then, yeah, I just felt lost. I'd spent almost $300,000 out of pocket in medical bills, and so I was broke. And it was just a really bad time. But I started praying and visualizing and asking daily for a purpose that I could become passionate about. And uh, I don't know if you guys know it, I'm sure Doc Waters does, but the brain, by its very nature, has to answer every question you ask. It cannot refuse to answer a question if you ask it. And so, if you do the math, the happier and healthier your questions are, the happier and healthier your life's going to be. And so I use that same technique. A lot of people use it just to remember somebody's name, or who was, where was George Washington in 1780 or something. But I use it. I found that the unconscious mind doesn't care. It'll answer any question. So I started asking it, how can I spend the rest of my life so that it will give my daughter a legacy of courage and hope, and maybe do the world some good, even if I die? And I'd ask that again and again and again. And typically within 5 to 7 days, you get an answer. 10 weeks later, it's still crickets. And I'm just getting kind of angry about it. And so one time I'm really meditating and asking this question. And I thought, to hell with it. I'm not going to get an answer. And I opened my eyes and I looked up, and I'd been so depressed. I hadn't even unpacked. I was living in this apartment like a frat boy. I hadn't even put my bed together. The mattress was still on the floor after 6 months. And I thought, well, while I'm waiting for the universe to answer me, maybe I could act like a responsible adult and unpack and maybe put my bed together. So I did. And the very first box I opened was a box of my childhood things that my mom wanted out of her house. And there was a journal from the 11-year-old Dean. And I thought, well, let's see what this guy had to say. So I open it up and it says, when I get old, I gotta climb Mount Everest, swim the English Channel. And man, just this electric shock went through me. And I thought, oh my gosh, I know I can't climb Everest because my blood counts are so bad they wouldn't handle elevation and I'm broke. And I know it costs about anywhere from $6,000 to $20,000 to do that, but I can swim the channel. So I get all excited about it. I call Aaron and he's like, hey, what? Not only no, but hell no. What are you thinking? And I'm like, oh, I'm just really excited about this. And he's like, Dean, only a year ago, you almost died of viral meningitis because you swam across a lake in Arkansas and swam through blue-green algae. Did you learn nothing? And I'd forgotten. I was like, oh yeah, I guess that's right. And I'm like, but what do you want me to do, Aaron? Die on a couch watching Wheel of Fortune? I'm not going to go out like that. He's like, well, at least do me a favor. He's like, you're going to look like an idiot. I'm like, I already do. And he said, but wear a nose plug because the blue-green algae went up your nose and, you got a semi-permeable membrane between your sinuses and your brain. If you wear a nose plug, even though your immune system's so bad, I'm a little afraid a pool's going to kill you. It gives you your best chance. So the very next day, that's what I did. I went and bought one of those nose plugs that only little kids wear, and I looked like an idiot. But man, it was the first time since my wife died I felt like myself. I pushed off the wall, and I'm like, oh, I remember you, because in the 80s and 90s, I did a lot of triathlons and really loved it. So I'd done thousands of miles in a pool. And I started getting myself back. And that first day, I was so sick, I was only able to do 11 laps. And it took me over an hour. I'd swim to one side, breathe for a while, swim back. Usually 11 laps takes me about 8 minutes or so. It took like an hour and 10. But oh my gosh, I was so excited and I felt so good. And so every day, I just tried to swim one more lap. And, I'm swimming a mile by Thanksgiving and feeling is clear in my head. And I was starting to gain weight again and it was giving me muscle tone. And long about Christmas, I get out of the pool and I think, who cares if another middle-aged man puts on a Speedo and swims to France? It does the world no good. And in my case, it won't be a pretty picture. So what could I do that would do the world some good? And I'd remembered 30 years before, I'd been out here for a bicycle race to visit my family and do a bicycle race. And there were about 600 people in it. I came in like 15th, which for me was really good. And so my family threw me a big party, a big picnic on the banks of the Willamette. And all my growing up years, it was just this polluted oil slick. As a matter of fact, the biggest joke when I was a kid was if Jesus had walked across the water and it was the Willamette, it wouldn't have been a miracle because it was just such an oil slick. But this day, it was big and blue and fresh and beautiful. And there were waterfowl swimming in it and green stuff, plants growing up. It just looked like this garden. And so I just stood down there watching it. Finally, my dad came down and he was kind of congratulating me. And my dad was forever my hero because he was quite the man's man. He climbed all the mountains on the West Coast. Some of them, like Mount Hood, the tallest mountain in Oregon, he climbed over 50 times. And he ran most of the world's major marathons. And so I was trying to impress him, I guess. I'm like, hey, Dad, anybody ever swum this whole thing? And I thought he'd pat me on the back and congratulate me as his boy, and he's like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Where do you come up with this crap? And so I kind of stuck. It was almost like throwing the gauntlet down. Now I had to do it. So I went back home and I brought all sorts of maps back to Kansas from the Willamette. I was going to do it that next summer. And I'm 24 at the time, living in Ark City and saving for a house, newly married. And my little Ark City girl, Mary's like, what are you going to do? I'm going to become the first person to swim the entire length of the Willamette River. And she's like, in Oregon? And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, how long is that? And I said, it's 187 miles. And she's like, how long will that take? And I said, probably about 3 weeks if I am able to keep going, because it'll be about 10, 12 miles a day. She's like, and so how are we going to pay rent during those 3 weeks? I'm like, oh, I never thought about that. She's like, yeah, and we're supposed to be saving money for a down payment on a house. What are you thinking? I'm like, well, I guess I'm not. And so I just dropped it right then, but it stayed there in my heart. And that came back 30 years later. And I thought, yeah, now I got to do it. It made no sense, but dreams don't have to.
So what was the river's name?
Willamette. Yeah.
Yeah. How old were you when you swam that, or did you swim?
54. And I was still an active cancer patient. I still had leukemia and lymphoma.
How did you manage that with your condition?
Yeah, barely. It was hard. And, my daughter and I have written a book about it called The Wild Cure From Death to Life on Oregon's Longest River. And there's some things we didn't put in it just because we had some readers read it before we published it, and they just felt like it was too graphic. There were too many hard things in it. So we watered it down a bit. But one of the hardest things was that year of swimming in the pool training to do this. I had lymphoma and I didn't know much about the lymph system. I didn't know the lymph system's all over your body, and they're just these little filters or strainers for your blood. And they only work when you're moving or active. And so one of the things that made it the hardest when I was so sick to get in the pool, a lot of people are like, oh, I don't have enough motivation to go exercise. Well, yeah, that was kind of a thing. But what made it really hard was not just the sheer exercise, but about 30 minutes to an hour after I swam, when I had lymphoma. So many of those lymph systems, those lymph nodes were plugged full of toxins, and I got those babies going. And so I'd pump all this toxin into my bloodstream. And within about 30 minutes to an hour after every swim, I'd just be sicker than a dog for about an hour, if not the rest of the day. And, you think, well, then why didn't you quit? Well, I didn't have anything else to live for. And I thought, either I do this or I sit and watch Netflix all day, feeling sorry for myself. And I'd done that for 2.5 years already, and I was getting tired of that. So, yeah, it just wasn't easy. Yeah. But by the time I got to the river, I was stronger, I was clearer, and I'd had the benefit of cold water. Yeah, this was all the way back 2013. I crossed into 2014 and thought, oh my gosh, my body is really fragile right now. I better take the next 6 months and slowly acclimatize it to the temperature of the river, because the Willamette is the largest river in Oregon. Like I said, it's 187 miles long, and it comes out of the mountains. So it's largely a snowmelt river. Goes through our two biggest college towns, University of Oregon Ducks, and then in Corvallis, Oregon State Beavers. and then it comes through our capital city, Salem, and then it comes out Portland and into the Columbia River. But it was 42 to 45 degrees.
Wow. What did that do to your body?
Well, I wanted to be in the world record, Guinness Book of World Records, or at least be approved by the World Organization of Endurance Swimming or Outdoor Swimming. So my very first swim, it was 39 degrees, almost 40 in the water. And I tried to do it without a wetsuit because I like to think I'm pretty tough mentally. I lasted 20 minutes and I started having one of the scariest experiences of my life. They call it hypothermic aspiration, where you get so cold, your body seizes up and squeezes all the air out of your lungs. And so, yeah, I started doing that. And so I decided I'd probably better use the 3 mil wetsuit, triathlete's wetsuit. And so that's what I did. But even with that, I would go into hypothermia within about every 30 to 45 minutes.
And your body cools off so much quicker in water than it does anything else. That's why the cold plunge is so effective, right?
Right. And, that's what I was going to say, Aaron, is, I'd never heard it. I didn't hear about Wim Hof till a year after I did the swim in 2015. And I Instagram wasn't even a thing for guys my age back in 2014. And even if it had been, nobody was doing cold plunging. And so I just started doing these ice baths. And oh my gosh, even after the first one, I challenged myself to stay in for 2 minutes. I didn't even put any ice in it because the water in Portland comes out of the mountains. So it was probably about high 40s, low 50s. And to me now, that sounds like a warm bath. Back then, it was so cold. But I got out, and ever since my first wife died, I had just this crushing feeling on my chest. I called my 5,000 pounds, and I got out. Something felt weird. And I realized that 5,000 pounds was gone. I didn't know that when you get into a cold plunge, within 90 seconds, you get massive dumps of serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin, norepinephrine, all the feel-good hormones and chemicals. So I got out, and all of a sudden, this terrible load of tragic grief wasn't there. And it was like, holy crap, this feels so good. But then my therapist brain just started spinning. I'm like, it couldn't be this easy. Couldn't be this easy. There's got to, what just happened? I didn't journal. I didn't meditate. I didn't do any deep breathing. I didn't go to a support group. It couldn't be as easy as getting my big old hairy butt in a cold tub. But I waited. I thought, well, it's going to come back. And in about 2 or 3 hours, it did. So because I like to figure things out, I got back in, and sure enough, within about 90 seconds, 2 minutes, it was gone. And so that was one of the biggest gifts just from all that training and before the swim that I could have been given, because just to know that if I needed to, I didn't want to use it to deny my grief process, but to know that I had an easy out if I just couldn't take it anymore. And there were a lot of nights I just couldn't take it anymore, but there was nothing I found that would work. And I didn't want to take drugs. Aaron offered me, antidepressants and different things after she died. And I just didn't, he didn't want me to do it either, but he just, as a friend, he hated seeing me in that much despair. And once I started cold plunging, man, it was a whole different world, because I knew that I had that option if I needed it. And there was no science yet behind it. And so I've told Wim Hof that I could be his ugliest poster child because I had no placebo effect.
Do you actually know Wim Hof? Because I do his breathing
once, and because he's been on a couple podcasts where they reference my story to him. And he's like, oh yeah.
I send out the cold plunge and the Wim Hof breathing techniques almost every day through the clinic here. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I thought he was a lot older than me. Sorry, Wim, if you see this. But he's only a year older than me.
Oh wow.
But I think he's lived a harder life, so to speak. I think he wasn't married to a Baptist.
There you go. That's all good. Wow, I'd like to meet him someday.
Yeah, he's a character. He did DM me in 2018 because he came here to Oregon and climbed Mount Hood with a bunch of people, like 20 guys, and they did it in sandals and shorts and nothing else.
Oh wow.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, you climbed my mountain. I didn't know you were going to be here. And he's like, yeah, Dean, it would have been great.
Good. Yeah, the Wim Hof breathing techniques have kind of taken on their own. I don't know, just like the cold plunge, kind of taken on its all the
Well,
life hacks.
nothing against Wim, but they're just ancient yogic breathing techniques that
Yeah, but he simplified them and put his name on it.
Name on.
Yeah, exactly.
He repurposed.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's how you were the original cold plunger, because I can remember, several years ago, I mean, probably 10, maybe 15, when you started talking to me about cold plunge, and it's like, I don't know. But I mean, to watch you make your transformation from being so depressed, and we both were depressed together. We both were going through some pretty rough times. I'd gone through a divorce. I had a uh, fractured ankle, several pins, lots of surgery. Just gone through a divorce. I couldn't work because I was a threat or whatever. And so that's when you called and said, "Hey, dude, you got to get out here." And you wouldn't stop until I got that post surgical leg in the ocean and grounded it. And that finally changed me for the better. And I was at threat of losing my leg at that point. And yeah, and I just had terrible bone growth. But you wanted to make sure that I got in the ocean, and you got me the ocean, and it's clear. I got better. So
Yeah, it's well, I'm happy to hear that. I'm happy to hear that I haven't just been a liability on your life, because man, as Bree and I we were writing the book, I realized all the worst moments in that part of my life, you were there for me. And man, it shocked me, because since they were the worst moments, I'd really forgotten. It was all kind of blurry. But yeah, you were the one that told me the first time in 2007, or right before 2007, that I had leukemia. And then you were there when I found out that Mary had a brain tumor. You were there when she died. You were there afterwards when very few people, if anyone, I mean, the Baptists ran for cover, but you were there. And then you were there during the viral meningitis, trying to help me figure that out. So, yeah.
oh, good. And we're brothers. That's what
Yeah.
makes it.
And
It's just
the coolest thing is, Kenny, he came out on day 16. And when I swam the Willamette, it took me 22 days. And on day 16, I swam in, and there was Aaron, and he's like, "Oh, geez, Dean, you look really skinny." He's like, "I don't have my skin fold calipers." He started pinching me. I'm like, "Man, what are you doing? We don't know each other that well." And he's like, "Oh, geez, Dean, you're down to less than 3% body fat." And I'm like, "Isn't that a good thing?" He's like, "No." He said, "You've got to take the next day off." And looking back now, maybe I did. I think he just wanted me to take him to the Oregon coast. And so that's what we did. Had a great time at the beach, but yeah, he's just been there through all the really important moments, and especially in that time of my life.
Well, and so have you for me. You got me through some really rough times as well, and your friendship, as well as your professionalism, but your friendships meant the world to me. It kind of pulled me out of my funk back when I was really at the lowest point of my life as well. But
Went through some tough time.
it's kind of interesting. It's probably been what, 20 years, 15 years since we've seen each other. Yet we're still best.
We I came back in 2016. So it's not quite been 10, but it only feels like 20.
My wife, because you said you had to approve her before I did it again. Yeah.
And she got two thumbs up and a couple big toes. So
But it's kind of interesting. I feel like that, you know, we have me through doing medicine, you through doing psychology, psychiatry, um, have come to the same area. We've come back all the way full circle from conventional medicine and conventional counseling, et cetera, to what we're doing now. So, can you kind of fill us in on what you're doing now? That's I think is very interesting. Dean's very famous for doing some of his work in psychology, which to me is the crux of what really needs to happen these days.
yeah, I'm as pretentious as it sounds. Everything I've learned through my lived experience in the last 10 years, because Kenny, what I didn't tell you about is after spoiler alert, I lived, and uh, 22 days in the Willamette, and it was 42 to 45 degrees the first 16 days. And so I was constantly in hypothermia. Every 45 minutes, I'd have to get out on the riverbank and run in place or do jumping jacks until, uh, my internal organs would quit banging against my rib cage and my mind would clear up. My dad could always tell when I was going hypothermic because I'd start slurring my words like I'd had too much to drink. It was like time for you to get out. And so I'd get out and I thought, and I think this is such a fitting, beautiful metaphor for life. I would just tell myself again and again, well, that's why nobody's done it because it's hard. But lo and behold, that constant hypothermia is what healed my leukemia. First blood test I took after the swim, the leukemia was magically and mysteriously gone. And so my oncologist and I thought that the lymphoma would just dry up and go away, but it didn't. It got aggressive. And my oncologist again was pressing me to do chemo and radiation. And I said, no, nature healed me once. Maybe, give me a couple weeks, see if I can find something that nature will heal me again. And I found Dr. King Lee from Nippon University out of Japan, who had taken men with cancer into the forest and had them do a slow kind of meditative walk where they're noticing everything, trying to use all their senses. He called it forest bathing. And unbeknownst to him at the time, forests all trees emit something called phytoncides. It's an essential oil, kind of an aerosol that comes out of the trees. And phytoncides boost your immune system anywhere by 50 to 200 times for 2 weeks. And so I thought, I'm not that smart a guy, but if I go out not for an hour or two like he had him do, but all day, and if I do it every week and it lasts for 2 weeks, maybe this thing had kind of become exponential. And so I started that May of 2015. And by March of 2016, my lymphoma was gone without chemo or radiation as well. And so I was fortunate enough to be able to heal or watch nature heal both my leukemia and my lymphoma. And that really changed the way I look at life. And so the pretentious thing is in the last year and a half, I've developed a new form or a new approach to psychology called bio-wild psychology. I believe the bio part is biologically, I don't believe we can be healthy or happy unless we're getting out in nature. The hippies used to talk about vibrations and frequencies and all that stuff. And, I come from hippie uh, the biggest hippie state in the union. So I was like, yeah, whatever. But now it's just plain well proven neuroscience that we're bioelectrical beings and we live on this big battery we call the earth. And we are totally separated or disconnected from it. And we lose our charge, literally. We take better care of our cell phones than we do ourselves. You know, I don't know one person that doesn't plug in their cell phone every night before they go to bed because they want it to work the next day, but they never plug themselves into the planet. And then they expect a lot out of themselves. And I think that's the reason for anxiety, most forms of anxiety, depression, addiction. And so rather than start with symptoms, I start with the source. How much are you plugging into the planet, when and how, and what would be best for you? And that's a very, very different approach. But one of the biggest differences is the outcome. Most therapy ends when either the client says, "Oh, I feel better, I'm done," or the therapist gives them a self evaluation or some kind of psychological test and says, "Ah, you're good." But it's as silly as an apple tree trying to grow strong and be the biggest, baddest apple tree in the orchard. That's not the way nature works. And my system's built on nature and natural laws. What is a happy, healthy apple tree? Well, you can tell because it's got really good fruit and it gives it to everyone around. And that's the end of biowild psychology. You'll know if a person's ready to be done because they're flourishing to the point they have a lot of overflow. They're bearing a lot of fruit. And it just makes sense. It's so common sense. It's ridiculous that nobody else has come up with it yet. And so I'm really excited, and I've been using it on clients for the last year and having extraordinary experiences. Even with those, I've had a couple stage 4 cancer clients get better simply because they learn how to charge. They learn how to get outside routinely in ways that they enjoy, and they learn how to take care of themselves, both mentally and physically, and in a way that's going to, at 6 month, 1 year mark, they're going to be flourishing again. You know, I tell everybody we heal at the pace of nature. Everybody wants to come in one time and feel better and stay better the next day, but that's not a farmer. You know, I lived where farmers were for years and years. They don't plant something and expect it to have a harvest the very next day. We can't either. So
So
that's a base.
you've basically taken all the biohacks that have made so many people famous, the Gary Breckas, the Mark Hymans, the all. You've taken all those biohacks and then kind of plugged them into nature. Is that what you're saying?
Vice versa. I tell everybody, why biohack when you can biohave? All they've done is they've taken one element from nature that's always been there and tried to replicate it. I think, why not just go out in nature and get it raw, get it unfiltered, uncensored? Because I am convinced we still have such limited insight as to how powerful and healing nature is, that even if we get the best red light sauna or the best cold plunge or the best whatever biohack there is, we're still missing certain elements because of our limited insight.
Well, just like food. I mean, we're finally coming to this. We're finally coming to the point where it's like, well, this ultra processed food is really bad for you. It's like, really? So I mean, what I tell people is the closer you get to nature, you know, the better off you are. And so grass fed beef, um, fruits, vegetables from an organic garden, all of those things are finding out that that is absolutely the best thing for you. Now, you know why not? Why not do nature? I just don't understand. Um, but I love what you're doing, man. That's just and the success you're having is great.
That when we went to swim the River Shannon in Ireland, you know, it's a small country and they don't allow a lot of the additives and preservatives in their food. And so a lot of our food was pretty much, since it's such a small country, farm to table in a day or two, especially the beef. They're real careful. They don't do those big farm. They don't have room for those gigantic cattle farms or ranches. And so uh, we didn't know all that. And I still wasn't to the point where I knew that much about food. Bobby's taught me a lot about food, but at that time, you know, we were just newly married and we'd only known each other for a year and a half or so. And she hadn't really helped me change a lot of my Midwestern habits. And uh, about a week into the swim, we all noticed we had a lot more energy and we felt a lot better. Our hair looked better. Our eyes had a little more sparkle to them. And then we realized, oh, we've been eating better food.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just that easy. It's just that easy. Yeah, I remember when you came back from Ireland, you were pumped like never before. I think that's when all of the depression and all of life's heaviness that you had, I never saw you look better than when you came back from Ireland. And
Yeah, yeah. It's just so much. I mean, it was the hardest swim ever because there's no, they call it the River Shannon, but it's really just a series of lakes. And it took me 25 days to swim it because 23 out of the 25 days we had a 10 to 15 mile an hour wind or more headwind. And I don't know how much you know about open water swimming, but anytime you get more than a 10 mile an hour headwind, it pushes the first 2 feet of water in the direction. And so I was like trying to scrape for every inch for 180 miles. It was nuts. But the Irish, oh my gosh, if I could go and live there, I would. They were just so much fun and so friendly. And their culture was kind of like ours, only different. Never saw anybody on a cell phone, even the kids. And the families were so tight. Maybe it's because they're mostly still Catholic.
I remember you saying they're the best people in the world. I remember you saying when you got back from that the Irish are the best people in the world.
Oh, they are. They just are. I mean, and the fathers. At first, you know, we walked. It was a rainy day, and there were a bunch of little kids playing at a playground, and there were two guys in trench coats sitting there watching them, and you know, my spidey sense went up. You know, and I'm like, oh, geez, Bobby, we got to go in and make sure those kids are safe. She's like, what? And I'm like, those guys in the trench coats. She's like, ooh, yeah, that's kind of creepy. So we walked over, we realized they were their dads. And so we started watching this thing. And even with the teenagers on a weekend night, we'd see a group of teenagers go by. There'd be a dad or two with them, just hanging, just kind of monitoring. And nobody seemed to mind. Everybody was having a good time. And it was just so much fun. Yeah, it was just they were so much healthier, so much more well connected. Yeah, everybody just wanted to sit down and laugh and have fun and talk. You know, nobody was just sitting there watching TV unless it was, you know, a soccer game.
True. True.
So let's go back to the forest and explain that a little bit more. I was amazed by that. It cured you just by going to the forest and walking. Explain what you did. Did you walk barefooted? I know grounding you have to be barefooted and you can't be on
Yeah, I
concrete.
didn't know about grounding yet.
Okay.
At that time in 2015, I'd kind of heard of it, but didn't really know about it. Um, and so most of the time, I did have my shoes on until what I did is I'd hike 2 or 3 miles along this hiking trail to this really nice waterfall and this glacial stream. And then I'd get about a mile or two off the path where I wouldn't have to see anyone. in just this grove of 100-foot tall Douglas fir trees and cedar trees and some pine. Just this real friendly little area where nobody'd ever bother me. And I'd put up a backpacking hammock and just sleep there all night, watching the stars, sometimes listening to the sounds and getting a little spooked because there are bear and mountain lion up there. But never seen any yet. So that's kind of nice. But mostly for 24 hours, I just sit in my backpacking hammock or by the glacial stream, just sitting and meditating or praying or reading or sleeping, just letting my brain decompress because that's what nature's for, and especially trees. I think in the next 10 years, because I've had several of my clients who are grief stricken do this, go out and just sit in the trees. And I think trees pull the grief out of you because they're basically gigantic antenna coming out of this battery. And so, literally, as crazy and Star Trekky as it sounds, they create a force field that you're a vibrational field you're walking into, and it just pulls the junk out of you. I hate to admit it being a guy, but after Mary died, there were several times I cried myself to sleep. As a matter of fact, I don't know if you remember this, Aaron. I was just thinking about this the other day. About a month after Mary died, I cried so hard, and I never really cried before she died. So this was a new experience for me. I cried so hard that it swelled my eyes shut. And I called you up because I pretty much had him on speed dial. And I'm like, Aaron, I'm like, I'm a total wuss. And he's like, no, you're not, Bubba. What's going on? And I'm like, no, I've cried so hard I think my eyes are swollen shut. He's like, oh yeah, that can happen. He's like, just settle down, and within about 20 minutes they'll open back up again. I'm like, okay. I didn't know if I'd done permanent damage or what, but I'd cried myself to sleep several nights, but I'd never woken up crying. And the first night I slept in the forest, it kind of freaked me out because at about 1 a.m. I woke up crying and just sobbing. And I thought, well, I know enough about the body now. I know it's as humans, we're designed to feel and release. So nobody's ever going to hear me or see me. I'm just going to let my body convulse and do what it needs to do. And every Friday night when I'd go out, it'd do it. Any place else, it's never done it. So I think something very special happens when you're out in the forest among the trees. And that was a big part of the healing. And then before I'd leave, I'd get in the glacial stream. And it was usually 29, 30, 31 degrees because it's coming right out of the glacier. But it had all those ancient minerals. And of course, being in water barefoot, I was grounding most of the time out in the sunlight. So it was doing things I didn't even know it was doing. Yeah.
That's an awesome story. That so at what I remember you calling me. At what point were you completely free of cancer? Was it right after the Willamette?
Well, I was completely free of leukemia right after the Willamette, but I wasn't free of cancer because I still had the lymphoma. Um, I became totally cancer free March of 2016.
Wow. Has anybody
Only 9 months after I started the forest bathing.
right?
Right.
What did your doctor say?
This can't be what did it. He's like, what just, but he was so shocked, and he was the world's number 3 researcher. He was down at University of California, San Diego, Dr. Wernerio Castro. And when he took the first blood test after the swim, he about scared me to death because he said he walked in and he'd been a long time. He'd been out. He says, I'm going to go get your numbers and look through them. Been gone for about 30 or 40 minutes. And, that usually isn't a good sign. And he came back in and he looked down at his clipboard, and I'll never forget it. He about made me just poop my pants because he said, boy, Dean, I don't know how to tell you this, Well, anytime I'd ever, because Aaron even told me that a couple times. Anytime a doctor told me that in the last 10 years previously, it hadn't been good news. And so I I think I just turned white and looked like I was going to throw up. And he looked up because I wasn't saying anything. He's like, "Oh, Dean, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't realize what that meant." He's like, "No, I don't know how to tell you, but I've been doing this for 30 years and I can't find your leukemia. As a matter of fact, if I hadn't diagnosed you myself, I would have said you'd been misdiagnosed because I had chronic lymphocytic leukemia. And modern Western medical lore is that once you get CLL, it never goes away. You just have to manage it." And he reminded me of that fact. And he's like, I've just never seen it or heard it. I don't know what to make of it. I said, "Well, what do you think happened?" And he's like, "Well," and this again, he'd never heard of Wim Hof, but he was a brilliant man. He's like, "As near as I can think, uh, rather than the swim making you sicker, the constant hypothermia might have had, you in ketosis so much that it healed your leukemia." And so I thought, wow, okay.
which is another which is another life hack. I mean, like,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Now,
ketosis. I mean,
now we
yeah.
all know about ketosis. I'm like, oh, what?
So, and I have a lot of cancer. I have a lot of cancer patients, and I do some things that, I mean, like ozone, for example, is one of the things that I do that cancer does not like. Cancer loves sugar.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Cancer does not like oxygen. Cancer loves acid, does not like base. So, I mean, all of those things that we're finally kind of putting together, and it's all in nature.
It is. It is.
So after you got your good news from your doctor, did he take this information, study it, and then use it in his own practice, or is it just like this is a fluke and probably will never happen again?
Yeah. I, I I think he treated it, even though he was wise and wonderful and very caring, he kind of treated it as a fluke. And um, oncology isn't going to study it because most of oncology is run by big pharma. And I don't want to sound conspiratorial, but
We talk
Right.
about
it's
here.
Yeah.
We talk
pretty
about that here.
hard, pretty hard to make money off of guys like me. As a matter of fact, I'm anti money to those people. I've gotten a lot of hate online. I can't tell you how many bots and trolls, especially if I have a really big post that talks about my healing. And I'm not against chemo and radiation. I'd have done it. As a matter of fact, we had it planned for right after my swim because he thought it would break me down so much I'd have to have it. Um, and so I'm not against it, but I have people all the time telling me I'm killing people and I'm a terrible person. And I'm like, I'm just telling my story, man. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that are resistant to anything not big pharma, and I don't know why. And people do not like big insurance, big pharma, but they don't want to get off that track. They want to stay on it because they've been brainwashed to know that this is right and this and everything else is wrong.
Well, and that's what I mean. We talk about that quite a bit here as well. Is that, yeah, big pharma is. I mean, they definitely, like Dean said, if people don't make money on people like
Exactly.
Dean, they don't make money. I mean, exercise decreases all cause mortality. Why wouldn't you share that with the world versus take this pill? But yeah, that's it, and the petroleum industry, et cetera, that makes all these medications is, I mean, it's kind of scary when you figure out how deep it really is.
It really is very scary.
And for me, that was the turning point. That COVID was the turning point when it's like, gosh, everything they're telling us to do is killing people, and I I just can't be a member of that group anymore. You know,
Well, quite honestly, Aaron, you never work. Um,
true. I
uh,
was always a cowboy.
Yeah. I mean, back in what was it, 2005, he came to me and we had a long chat. And Aaron was seriously considering moving his 5 kids and his wife to New Zealand because even back then he hated how he was being controlled by the system, and he just he had such a heart for healing people. He wanted to go where, I mean, you meet, here's the one doctor you'll ever know that wants to do house calls. He's like, and he got real excited. He's like, they still do house calls in New Zealand. I'm like, you want to do house calls? He's like, oh yeah, that's why I got into this, to help people. So
Yeah.
Well,
yeah,
you learn just like, for example, going and doing a house call, you learn so much about people. You learn so much about them, what they eat, how they live, this and that. So yeah, to me, a house call is I still do them, actually quite frequently. So
yeah, I remember I was in 2008 because my immune system was so bad. I was dying of a pneumonia, and I don't know how I ended up. I passed out somehow, and I don't know if the ambulance or my wife took me to the hospital. I wake up, and Aaron's standing over an IV, and he looks scared. And Aaron and I'd been through a lot of crazy situations with clients and patients together. I'd never seen him look scared, and I'm like, "Hey," he's like, "Oh, you're awake, good." And I'm like, "Yeah, you look scared." And he's like, "No, I don't." I'm like, "Aaron, I know you." And he's like, "Well, all I got to say is, man, you got to give it your best." And I'm like, "Well, I can do that." And then he turns to his nurse, and my wife was a super OCD clean freak. And he's like, let's send him home. And the nurse said, what? And he's like, his house is cleaner than this hospital. And then every day, like twice a day for the next 2 or 3 weeks, he'd come check on me. So it's not just the lip service. I mean, the guy actually does.
Yeah, I bothered him when he was on the lake a few weeks ago, and he came. My wife got stung by a yellow jacket, and she was in a lot of pain. Yeah, she was in a lot of pain from that sting, and he came. He met us at the clinic on at 10 o'clock Saturday night, and I was like, I I couldn't even call anybody in the medical plaza here at 10 o'clock at night and expect to have them come to the office. I can't even call them during business hours and get them and speak to a nurse. It's crazy.
so uh, how are things? I want you to talk about like, I want to hear about your cards, your life cards and stuff like that too, and your system.
I've been really busy the last year. Written a couple books. Wrote a journal called the Wild Me Manual, basically taking everything I've done and putting it into an easy to understand journal form where it's kind of like, hey, all you have to do is do this, find your way of doing that. Here's the reasons behind it. And just letting people journal their way through it. And then that led to the people that did that. One of the things they wanted more of is little biohacks and routines, mostly nature based, to help calm down their nervous system when they get dysregulated, when they all get all jacked up and anxious. They wanted little things like tree hugging or a cold plunge or grounding or just silly little things like that that sound weird, but then you do them and within a minute or two, you're fine. And so here, just in the last 6 months, I wrote another book called Nervous System First Aid, How to Spiral into Safety and Security Fast. And it's got over 50 actual biohack strategies that you can do in that. It's used mostly as a reference book. And then all that led to having so many clients do this kind of work. They started coming to me and telling me, hey, it's become getting out in nature and doing these fun things has become a chore. And I'm like, what? How can getting out in nature be a chore? And they're like, oh, it's just one more thing I gotta do. And so I thought, well, how can I put the spontaneity and play back into it? And so I happened to be at Barnes and Noble, and I saw all these different card decks. And I'm like, oh, that's what I could do, because everybody loves to play cards. And a lot of people have these affirmation cards and different things now. So I developed something called the Nature Code deck. There are 12 cards for each element: air, water, fire, earth. And you pick a card, and on the back of the card, it has a thought provoking statement, a theme. And then you turn the card over, and it's got a nature connection strategy in 3 different degrees of difficulty. So you can pick the easy, the moderate, or the difficult challenge. It's all pretty much the same thing, in that challenge. And even if you pick 1 or 2 a week, it puts the spontaneity and the playfulness back in nature connection. I'm having a really good time with those. As a matter of fact, people are kind of getting hooked on them. I'm looking forward to getting them out here in the next month into production, because it's weird. It's almost like something spiritual's happening, because people will go, they'll shuffle the cards, they'll go to pick one, and I can't tell you how many times they've told me it was the exact thing they needed and the exact thing they were thinking about. They just are picking the right cards every day. As a matter of fact, some of my clients, as a part of it almost makes me feel like one of those tarot card readers or something, because during the appointment, they'll, somewhere in the appointment or at the end of the appointment, they'll be like, "Hey, Dean, draw a card for me, will you?" So I'm like, "Okay," and then they'll be like, "Oh my gosh, that's exactly what I was going to tell you. I wanted you to pick one on it." It's just crazy how that works. I don't know what's behind that, uh, but yeah. So it makes it a little more spontaneous. You don't have to plan it as much, and it'll take you deeper. Plus, it'll give you a wide variety of things to do. You can't get bored with.
That's cool. And so, just for our people that are listening, I want to also connect them with you. You still do like weekends and stuff like that, don't you?
Yeah, yeah, I do I'm coaching people around the world. I try to keep it to about 10 to 15 people so that I can give everybody my best. Um, but I've got a couple openings right now. And I mean, I'm seeing somebody from Amsterdam and somebody from Singapore, and then a lot of Americans and some folks from the UK. So that's fun. And so I'm still doing private one-on-one coaching. And then I do, one of my favorite things to do is people will pay me for personal adventures. They'll ask me to get together with them remotely to get to know them, to hear what's going on with them. And then they'll come and join me out here in Oregon or in Sedona, Arizona, and I'll take them hiking, get them way out in the middle of nowhere, give them usually a challenge that will help kind of identify where their weak and strong points are, and then we'll use that. Or some just want me to teach them how to do what I do, like in the forest bathing, or they'll do a cold dip with me, that sort of thing. And what's been fun is always before I just did it one on one, sometimes couples, but you pay me a certain amount of money. I don't care if you bring your buddies. And so what I've had lately that's been kind of fun is a guy uh, will set the date, pay me the money, and then he'll bring 3 of his buddies. And so I'll take 4 guys out. They'll split the cost, so it's a lot cheaper for them. And then they've almost got like a built-in support group there too. And so I take people on personal adventures and teach them how to connect with the wild. Hoping to do a lot more of that. I've got an agent here in the last 3 months, and she's real excited. She's redoing my website and going to give me a lot of speaking gigs and corporate deals. So, yeah, really, really starting to boom.
That's awesome. And you deserve it, man. You've been through a lot. You deserve it.
Thank you.
So, how do if I'm trying to send people to see you, where do I have them hook up with you at? How do I do that?
They can come through my website, thewildcureway.com, or the place that sadly, even though I'm like anti social media, that's where I meet the most people. And I never wanted to be one of those guys that, you DM me and never hear back. I think that's really pretentious. And so it's almost become like a time and a half job. But I answer every DM. And so if you just have them get on my Instagram, it's Dean Hall Official. And today I should cross 190,000 followers. So I'm starting to get some good numbers. And I'll answer their DM. But you being you, Aaron, you got my phone number. You could even give them my phone number.
Good. The Yeah, we need to get together and do that for sure. I don't know that I can keep up with you still or not, but and your wife and your wife's a yogi, right? Correct
Yeah,
as
yeah.
well.
She's yoga, but mostly a personal trainer, and she's gotten super into helping women 45 and above know how to exercise and use the right kinds of peptides and the right amounts of peptides. She's become a peptide expert, and so she's got her own peptide coaching practice, and then she's also a bikini fitness competitor. She hasn't done one, but she's thinking about doing another one here in the next year or so. Yeah,
So she's doing peptides as well. I started getting into peptides 2 years ago, and now I'm pretty heavily into them, and it really does it does change lives. I think the thing with peptides is once you start eating correctly and you start exercising and you start doing all the things that you can do, if you want to tweak it and make it just a little bit better, you can add. I think there's people that like to do peptides and peptides. I mean, semaglutide is a peptide. We do that as well, but the problem is that everybody just wants to just do the peptide. Doesn't work like that. Doesn't work like that. It but
and you know why I think it doesn't work like that? Because it's not supposed to. We as human beings are supposed to be up and moving and active and vital. And I'm glad peptides don't work like that because then nobody would ever get off their big fat butts.
right.
But once I really, even when she started getting into it, I was like, I don't know, I don't know. And then she sat me down and explained that peptides are just, most of them just strings of amino acids. They're totally natural. They're not pharmacological. So once I realized they were a natural string of amino acids, I was like, oh, well, why wouldn't everybody do it then?
Well, and that's Kenny actually has done those as well. So
Yeah, he introduced me to BPC 157 when I injured my tricep tendon, and by the time I got my cast off, I had full range of motion, and my physical therapist could not believe that my range of motions was exactly the same on both arms. He was
Wow.
expecting it to be a little bit more stiff, and I was too because when he was pushing on my arm to stretch my elbow, I kept waiting for that pain, and I never got that pain. So from there, I started looking into it and listening to podcasts, and there's so many peptides out there for any purpose you want, you know. There's I've been taking tesamorelin, and I haven't taken it at a high dose like it recommends, but I just to stretch out the peptide throughout the month. But I've been seeing results from it. I started with sermorelin and ipamorelin, and that gave me such a good that my sleep was so good. And then I decided to go to tesamorelin and see how that felt. But I my body feels really good. I don't feel like I'm 55, and that's amazing.
Yeah, I don't feel or look like I'm 65 from the neck down. Neck up, it's kind of a train wreck, but what's a guy gonna do?
it's all good. No, but those natural cures, I wanna make sure that people, get hooked into you and I wanna make sure that people get your books, etcetera, 'cause I think you're an amazing I mean, you've been an amazing friend and just what you've done with your life's been pretty amazing.
Well, thank you, Aaron. I mean, that's coming from you, somebody I respect more than anybody, that a man that lives and breathes healing and offers it to thousands and has his whole life. I mean, that almost chokes me up. Well, it does, and I'm trying hard not to let it. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, what books? So we can tell our audience. Tell us about the books that you've written so far.
Yeah. The first one was The Wild Cure, From Death to Life on Oregon's Longest River. And it's simply the story of what brought about that swim. But more importantly, it's about the swim itself. And we rewrote it. My daughter's a novelist. She graduated from Pacific University out here by Portland with a creative writing degree. And then the cool thing is, she went over to Ireland with me and guided me in a kayak through the River Shannon, and then stayed and got her master's degree in creative writing in Dublin. But so she's a novelist. She's now written over 20 novels. And I knew I wanted her to help me on this. And the first 3 times we wrote it, it just sounded like I was bragging, and that's not me. And then she came up with this idea called braided interview, where you interview everybody that's involved, and then you use that and you braid it together. So it's like everybody's talking about the same thing at the same time, one big conversation. And people have found it was the first time that we know of that it's ever been used for an adventure book. And the fun thing is, you hear everybody's point of view about what was going on in my life or what they thought of it or what was happening for them at the swim, what they remember, what they didn't. Aaron's in it. She interviewed him. He threw his 2 cents in. And it's just a fun read. And we watered it down so that it's not super graphic, because some of it was just too hard to talk about it for most people who haven't been through those kinds of things. But it's still pretty graphic. Yeah, and we shortened it up so that most people get through it in 2 sittings, because we realize most people don't have the bandwidth to read a long book. And then the Wild Me Manual, it's a journal that they can take themselves through. And then Nervous System First Aid is coming out here in the next week or two. And that'll be, all of these are available on Amazon. And then the Nature Code deck, the cards that help you make nature connection, tell you what to do, and help you to have fun doing it. But not just fun, go pretty deep. They're very therapeutic. And then right now, I'm working on just a very short book I'm calling Bio Wild Basics, teaching people the very basic ideas behind bio wild psychology and how they can kind of grasp it, make it their own to make a really happy, healthy life in ways that are much easier than you would ever guess. This isn't, I mean, I guess it is nuclear science, but it's not hard to understand. So, yeah.
That's awesome.
Amazing. That's awesome.
I'll tell you what, Dean, you're a tribute, and I love what you've done with your life. I'm so proud of you,
Well,
brother.
feeling goes both ways, man. To see how you were the best doctor I ever met because you weren't a typical doctor, but then post COVID and just the head banging against the wall that I saw you suffer, and just heartbreaking, almost disrespect toward you by people in your profession. And then rather than that break you, you come and create this beautiful clinic where people can trust you and not be bound by what, people somewhere in a suit say. Yeah.
Well, the anything you want to say in closing?
Yeah. If you want to be happy and healthy, you've got to be connected to nature, which will help you understand and connect to yourself. and then help you understand, or at least be much more patient in understanding and connecting with your family and friends. And it will build such a life and such a richness to your life that you'll have a lot of overflow to give your community then as well. And that's really what we're all about. We Americans have been brainwashed to believe it's all about getting. But the older I get, the more I realize it's not about that at all. If you want your life to mean anything, it's about giving.
Right.
So, yeah, but you can't give from an empty basket. You got to fill up first, and nature does that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love your story, and keep doing what you're doing, and appreciate you being on the podcast.
And and one of these days when Dean gets out to Kansas, or if I get out, we'll do another podcast or do something so we can kind of keep people up to speed on what you're doing, because you're going to do great things, Bubba.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd love that. That'd be fun.
Yeah.